Wrokdown.
Hi, welcome to Wrokdown. I'm Wendy Stapleton. I Am Pegasus was a huge hit back in 1974, and apart from a couple of other minor charters, Ross Ryan and his songs were mostly overlooked in the preceding years, like so many others. Undaunted, he continued to write songs and diversified into comedy and producing. But the fans never forget, and Ross has a large fan base who continue to follow him around the country and snap up any new recordings. Would you please welcome my very special guest, Mr. Ross Ryan.
Hello, Wendy. Thank you for having me. I'm really well.
It was a huge hit.
It's stupidly so, in fact.
I would, if it was mine, I wouldn't say stupidly.
Well, but you know what I mean? It was all out of proportion, really. It was almost like, because I came from, rather than from the normal kind of 70s rock thing that was happening, I came from the singer-songwriter, and there weren't that many of us. And most of the gigs that were happening for the likes of us was kind of folk clubs. Like, for example, I lived in Sydney at the time, and there was nowhere to play for acoustic acts. Not that you could make any money. It was all kind of rock pubs.
Pubs.
And the club scene.
And it wasn't quite a club thing either. It was more like, as you said, more even acoustic folk, folkish.
And if you played at the folk lounges, you made $5. So
But you sold a squillion.
I know.
A squillion record.
But it's almost like my peer group all thought that I'd sold out. You know, you had success. You're not supposed to do that.
What the folk scene.
Yeah.
But you see, I think what it probably is as well, apart from it being a fabulous song, you appealed to a really wide demographic. That song.
Did I? Do you think so? I must have. It sold heaps. I must have. Yes. But I think it was one of those records. I've obviously thought about this a bit because I get asked about it for the last 3 decades. I don't know whether it's such a great song, but it was a great record. And I think there's a slight difference, and a lot of that's to do with Peter Dawkins.
Picky.
Well, you know what I mean. I mean, it's just
just accept the compliment.
But for years and years, I used to do stand-ups of Pegasus on stage, and people got really pissed off about that, which I can understand now. But at the time, I suppose I was sort of going, I've got better songs than this. I know everybody says that, but it was, and in fact, when I do play it, people say, "Oh, you've changed it so much." But in fact, I can't play it the way the record is. The record's actually got this dun 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 dun, which doesn't come across very well.
It's too dated now.
Yeah, and it doesn't come across on an. In fact, I play it now the same way I played it when I wrote it, which is as an acoustic song.
Yeah, as acoustic, because of course all the production.
Gentler than what it was. But the bit that I suppose I'm bemused by the song is, one, it was supposed to be a comedy song, because I discovered by looking in a baby book that Ross means horse.
Does it?
It comes from the High German.
What a cruel mother you've got.
I know.
Was that because you were born in Kansas?
It could have been. I was born in Kansas.
Tell us about your childhood.
Well, okay. My mum was a war bride, and she met my dad during the war. He was a submariner for the US Navy, and how they actually met is shrouded in family secrecy.
I was going to ask,
this day. We're not quite sure.
How did your mother get onto a submarine?
Well, she didn't actually get onto the submarine. She just met up with my dad when he was on shore leave, you see, in Fremantle. And it was all a bit sordid, I think. But my mum and dad would never talk about it. And we kind of just jumped from them meeting, in terms of what we were told, to them getting married in Las Vegas after the war.
When did you come to Australia?
When I was 9, so that would have been late, 1959. We moved to, they had this idea, my folks did, they wanted to come back. My mother hadn't been back since she'd moved over to America. And my dad decided, because he comes from a lineage of cowboys in Montana and stuff, and he wanted to get into farming. So they bought a farm near Albany.
So ending up in Albany,
yes, well,
would have been quite a shock to the system.
Well, if it had just been Albany, it would have been fine. But we ended up sort of like in the middle of nowhere in a one-room place that my dad and the rest of us built out of asbestos, I might add.
Nice. How many siblings do you have?
I've got an older brother and a younger sister.
But did it probably encourage you to write?
I suppose it did. My brother had a guitar that my brother was 5 years old, he still is, 5 years older than me. And
I can see what this interview is going to end up like. The comedian just keeps coming up.
He kind of tried it and got bored with it, so it was lying around. And I suppose the 1-2 punch of the Beatles and Bob Dylan sort of turned me around. Because my ambition was to be a producer. But in early 70s, particularly in Perth, that was not even a job description, let alone anything else. So I thought, I can't be a Beatle or I can't be a Dylan, but I could probably be a George Martin. And so I wanted to learn that. So I did that for 2.5 years. And whilst I was there, I recorded with mates an album, which I called Home Movies. I didn't do it to pursue a singing career. I did it to learn the process of making an album with being a producer.
Being a producer.
So the end bit of that story is that, so as a result, because I was a audio op and I used to know a lot of the booth announcers, I used to record all the booth stuff at Channel 9. And a lot of them were the guys that had radio shows in Perth. And there was this project that I was working on, making an album. So they're all saying, look, when you finally finish it, we'd like a copy and all that. So I had 80 copies made. I gave them all away. I didn't want to sell them. I just gave them away. And anyway, a couple of guys started playing them during their top-rating breakfast shows and morning shows and stuff. And I was Australia's answer to Cat Stevens.
Oh, great.
And which was very silly.
No, it's gorgeous.
But that led to the fact that I had a slight profile. And Roy Orbison came to town. He was doing an Australian tour. He had been to Darwin. Perth was the second date, and then there was another 14 dates in the east. And his support act had dropped out after the Darwin show for family reasons. So they needed somebody in a hurry that was easy to stage, available, and cheap. There I was.
That then was really the beginning of the start of your...
My Judy Garland story.
Your Judy Garland story.
I mean, it's like I paid dues in reverse. I wasn't even planning to be a singer. It was my hobby.
Well, you became a star whether you wanted to or not. We'll take a short break and be back very soon with Ross Ryan.
Wrokdown.
Welcome back to Wrokdown. My special guest this evening is Ross Ryan. You didn't finish telling me about the horse, the name Ross and
Okay,
meaning...
right. Okay,
and
yes.
then we'll get back onto your Judy Garland.
Yes, of course. Well, no, we've done the Judy Garland bit now. Yes, I looked up in a baby book and found out that Ross meant horse, and I thought that was funny. So I was writing this kind of comedy protest song about my name, and that was sort of going somewhere. And then I was looking for... I had a crush on an air hostess, and a disastrous situation. And so I was writing a song about that.
Name wasn't Christine, was it?
No, it was Kathy.
Okay.
And it was disastrous. And I think Kathy also hates my guts because of Pegasus, and rightly so. And so I wasn't getting anywhere with either song. They were stuck. So I combined them and got a flying horse, which I knew was Pegasus. So I went, I am Pegasus. I thought, oh, that's good. A kind of nice connection. But it was still a comedy song. And I remember when I went in, so I finished it off. And I'd played it a couple of times at gigs. And when I took it into the studio and played it a bunch of songs to Peter Dawkins, I sort of said, oh, and there's this one. And he went, that's the single. And I'm going, no, it's just this comedy thing I plan to do on stage.
Was that sort of taken out of your hands? The same as people say without George Martin, certain things with the Beatles
sure.
were probably just, as you said, guitar, written on guitar.
Well, I mean, you could say that it was taken out of my hands. I think it was just put into better hands, frankly. And he saw something in the song which I obviously hadn't and obviously still don't.
And that's why he was a producer.
Yes. And I'm quite willingly so. I mean, if I wasn't happy with how things were going, I could have quite easily just gone no.
Yeah.
But no, I was quite happy to go along with it. But I must admit, I was incredibly surprised with how big it was, because it took forever, because it was released and it didn't do much, and it just slowly crept up the charts. And it was in the charts for 6 months.
That really is like one of the longest runs.
I don't know. I don't know what the specs.
There wouldn't be many. There wouldn't be many other songs that stayed in the charts for that long.
But it was because it went up slowly, and also at the time, as you would know, and I'm sure a lot of your guests have mentioned this, every state had their own charts.
Yes.
So technically, it never reached nationally #1 because it reached #1 in every state at different times.
Time.
And the other thing was that I went overseas.
In the middle of all of this.
Yes, when Pegasus had come out, and I went overseas to promote the first album in America. And so it was actually a hit while I was gone. So, I mean, that's my advice to anybody out there in show business.
Go overseas.
Just release something and leave town. And I came back, and it had been this great, and everyone sort of said, you know, you were huge while you were gone.
So, obviously, you went over to America. That a hard place to break to.
It is, and I didn't like it, to be honest. I made no attempt to kind of crack the market, even though I still had American citizenship. It would have been okay. No, it just didn't click for me. And there is a good yarn from that. Was that the first album, the Poem You Can Keep album, was put out by Capitol, and there was one station in America that was playing tracks from it. It was an FM station in St. Louis, and whilst I was there, it got hit by lightning and burnt down. And it was kind of like God going, "This isn't your market, Ross." Slim Dusty record. I wrote a song for Slim Dusty, and that is one of my prized possessions. Is the fact that, you know, this living, or was at the time, legend of Slim Dusty recorded one of my songs, and because his catalogue will never be deleted.
Oh no, he's an icon.
And he used it in his movie. He did a movie that was called Slim Dusty the Movie. And I remember going to the premiere, and my song came up, and in the credits, you know, so there was my name in the film credits of cinema, and I leapt to my feet and went, "Author, author!" I thought, this is never going to happen again. I've got to do that. So.
I think the people in the sound booth just had a heart attack as well.
Sorry.
No, me too. I was all clapping and going, got a bit excited there. I feel that you actually derive a lot more pleasure from things that you've produced rather than the things that you did yourself. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I must admit, I've never been comfortable being in show business. That's the thing. I mean, I do enjoy performing, but I'm not a big fan of the industry per se, and I just don't ever feel like I fitted. You know, I always felt that I slid under the wire. I remember when I was driving over to Sydney for the first time to do the sessions with Peter Dawkins, and Ginger Man, Brian Cadd's Ginger Man, was being played a lot, and I loved that song.
Yeah.
And I remember saying, "Gee, wouldn't it be great if I could meet Brian? That'd be really cool. Maybe I'll get to do that." Well, of course I did, and various other people. But I always still kind of feel I'm always a fan, and I find it really uncomfortable to have them.
We'll take a short break, and then when we come back, I want to hear all about what you're up to now, because I know that you're going into quite a few venues with the new album.
You're always on the road, and you're always working on an album. Every act should say that.
We'll be back soon.
Wrokdown.
Back to Wrokdown. My very special guest is the one funny man, Mr. Ross Ryan. What are you up to these days?
Well, I'm dipping in and out of show business, to be honest.
You had a recording studio?
Had a studio, and I put it together basically to record an album of songs, which I mentioned before, which became the album One Person Queue. And it was at a friend's place, and we renovated his garage, gutted it, and built a studio in there. And I only really expected it to, because he was renting this place, to be about 3 years. I thought, in 3 years I could probably finish an album. Well, it was there for 13, and the album took me 10 years.
Just wondering whether the style of music that you wrote first, which was, as you said, slightly folky, were you ever tempted to sort of head off into that?
Oh no, I've always been a country fan, even when it wasn't sort of fashionable. I grew up, my folks had lots of Johnny Cash and Eddie Arnold records and people like that. So I always liked country music. It did go through a daggy stage, but that was just kind of what you saw commercially.
Yeah.
And in fact, you know, the two songs that I'm best known for, being Pegasus and another song called Blue Chevrolet Ballerina. You know, Pegasus had mandolin on it. A country player came and played mandolin, and Blue Chevrolet had a banjo on it. So I've always had banjos.
It's slightly that, yeah.
And in fact, the track that we've got here called Cool River is unashamedly country.
Oh, really?
That we'll be playing.
I look forward to hearing that. So at the moment you are, you've just finished at Capers.
Yeah.
Which is a great, fabulous...
Terrific venue, yeah.
Venue, actually. We were there about 3 weeks ago. It's just a wonderful place. You've just finished at Capers, and we're going to whack up on the website where you're performing.
Yeah.
So that'll be on www.wrokdown.com if you're interested in finding out where Ross is performing. Are you still doing a bit of comedy?
Oh, yeah. On the compilation is an old song that I wrote ages ago, well, I was still living in Perth, called Connie. And there was a version of that was done when I worked for the ABC. I worked on a kids' comedy show in the late 70s called Give 'Em Heaps, and which was one of the most self-indulgent television programs in history. Just three guys. Just.
And who was Connie?
Well, Connie was, it was supposed to be a send-up of Bobby Goldsboro. Remember Bobby Goldsboro? He had Honey.
Yes. Oh.
See the tree, how big it's grown, that one. And he also had another song called Molly, which was even sicker than Honey. And so as a friend of mine, we decided to write a Bobby Goldsboro-style song by Connie about this girl who, the guy singing the song about Connie, that they met in a basketball gym, and he dribbled through the door and she was standing under the net and stuff like that. And anyway, she ends up getting bitten by the dog he gives her, and dies of rabies. So I've had that song for a while, and we recorded it for this kids show. And so that's going to be on the compilation album that's coming out soon.
You're a delight, and thank you very much for coming on the show. And what are we going to take the show out with tonight?
Cool River, which was from the One Person Q album. This was from last year at Capers. And it's going to be on the compilation, which is entitled The Difficult Third compilation.
The Difficult Third. This is Cool River, and my guest has been Ross Ryan. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye.
Why can't I shake it? This low, lonesome feeling. And why can't I make it through even one lousy day? I should know better, but till I'm stronger, I need a cool river to carry me away, cool river to take me away. People, they tell you it takes time for healing, but my heart's so impatient, it can't bear the delay. Though if the only way out is to face up and break down, may that cool river carry me away, cool river take me away. Let the water surround me, let it flow through my face, and hold me until I start breathing. Once, maybe twice in life you get lucky, and I guess that's why goodbyes are so hard to fake.
And for me it's not easy, but I hope that she's smiling as that